So hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So if you're building web apps with Django or thinking of getting started, learning how to make database queries using the Django ORM is an absolute game changer for you. In this video, I'm going to break down how to make Django queries the smart way, obviously, using very simple examples that are easy to follow, even if you're new to back-end development. So why should you even watch this? So it's important to know that every dynamic web app needs to interact with the database or something of the sort. So whether you're building a blog, an e-commerce platform, or a social media network, you need some sort of database from which you'll need to make queries. And the Django ORM lets you write powerful database queries using Python without touching raw SQL. That means cleaner code, fewer errors, and faster development, given the fact we're even building using the framework itself, Django. So by the end of this video, you will know how to fetch data from your models, filter and sort query results, use the get, the filter, the exclude, and even more complex lookups, and avoid common pitfalls that many beginners run into. So the last time we did pretty good work, and today again our focus is on the queries. So I've written some models here for us. So we have a blog model, we have the author and the entry. So I picked leaf from the Django documentation that has these models ready for us written. And we shall be using these three models for our working today. So equally, I registered these to the admin so that they are available in the admin site. So I'll make migrations to impact this on my database. Make migrations and we shall migrate them. So perfect. Then we run our server. Python manage.py and server. This will open up our development server, obviously on port 8000. So at this point, we can access it. So 127/admin, and right there we have the authors, we have the blogs, and we have the entries. So perfect. Now we shall start with making queries. So making these queries, you can ideally make your queries from the views, just like we had some view here. You can make queries direct from PowerShell or Django. That's very powerful for testing purposes or practice purposes for the different requests, different queries that you're going to be writing. So I'll demonstrate one using the PowerShell, and we could still write some in our views. So the views make it maybe simpler in a way that you can move back to points and edit as opposed to the shell. So first and foremost, you should be knowing how to create objects. Yeah. So in Django, we create classes, just like here, the class being the model. So out of this class, we have our objects. And these objects is basically the actual data that is contained within the classes we have written, or the database tables that we have within our system. So I'll come to shell, and we shall start by adding a blog to our model that we have written. Because as of now, if I check my blogs, the blogs are empty. So I want us to add a blog direct from our PowerShell or direct from our CMD interface. Then equally, we shall add one from the views. So in here, I could come and say Python manage.py, then shell. So this will open up for me an interactive console from which I can interact with my models within my framework. So I should import the model of interest. Let me zoom this in a bit. So I'll come and import my model, and I'll say from the application name that we have, and in this case our app is called default. So I'll say from default dot the models, we shall import the model we want. So I'll say blog, and I'll hit enter. Now this has my blog imported. So given the fact I want to create a blog item, I could have a variable, maybe b, standing for the blog, and I'll say b is going to be equals to my model blog, and I'll open up the bracket. So when I open up the bracket, so when you open up the bracket, you come and pass here the field names that are going to be associated with this blog. So when you look at your model, we have a name and a tagline, being actually the fields within this table. So I'll come and add those exact fields here. So I'll say my name is going to be equals to maybe Makere blog. Then I'll hit that closing tag. Then I'll put a comma and put in the tagline. Then equally, I'll make this a string. So I would say maybe all students report now. Then I'll close the string and close this. So now I have an instance created out of my blog's model, and I'll hit enter. Now, as of now, this is not impacted yet on our database. If I refreshed here, I wouldn't have it. So we should invoke the save method. So I'll simply come and say b.save to have this committed to the model. So the save method ideally has no return value. So I'll simply say b.save and I'll enter. Now at this point in time, our model has that blog saved, as you can see there, Makere blog, and the content that we specified from our CMD here. So this is one way of creating the blog. So when you go with this approach, you have to call save method. Alternatively, you're able to avoid the save method by simply calling the blog, then the objects. So you could say the blog.objects.create, then you specify the fields you want to create for the blog. So let's look at that option as well. So here I'll call my b, and I'll remove this. I'll simply say blog.objects.create. Then I'll say now this is Makere new blog, and all students report within maybe 3 weeks from now. Then I'll hit enter. So this creates the blog instantly for you. You don't have to call the save method. So we have been able to create our blogs from PowerShell. So the same thing can be invoked. You can invoke the same from any view within your files that we had here. So we have our views file, and you could write a method that is going to create for you the blog and pass to it the data you want. And after, call either the save method or use the blog.theobjects.create to create that particular blog. Okay, so let's dive into that as well. So I'm going to write that method, and I will invoke it upon accessing the home view. So I'll come here and say definition create blog. Let me zoom in a bit. So definition create blog. then obviously I need to import the blogs. So I'll say from the current folder.modules, import, let me import everything else from there. So I'll come back to this point and I'll say the blog I'm creating is going to be equals to the blog model. Then I'll specify the name being created from the view. Then the tagline is going to be equals to, just to be sure of the spelling, okay, that's tagline. So that tagline is going to be equally from the views file, then exclamation mark there. So I have to call the b.save method. This is going to be blog, sorry. So blog.save, then we shall invoke that. So given the fact we want to create this blog when the user accesses the entry to our application, which was here. So this is localhost or 127 at port 8000 /. So when somebody visits this page, we want to be able to add that blog here. In other words, call the add blog function that we have just written and be able to add that blog to our system. So I'll come here and call that. I'll simply call the method name. So this is, we called it create blog. So I'll simply create blog here. So at this point in time, if I access my home view, I expect to have the blog created. So created from the view. So I think you see that we are able to have our queries executed both from either from the shell or from the view. So whichever you feel convenient for you, kindly use that one for obviously your testing and practice. But if I told you now writing your actual implementation of some logic for a given application you're going to be writing, then I strongly recommend that you maintain the views just as you're going to be working with the views. So that is the addition of the blog. Okay, now we're going to look at the update of the blog. How do you update a given blog? Probably I want to change the name of this one from created from the view to maybe something different altogether. So you should be knowing what uniquely identifies these items from the model. And in that scenario, we need their information. So this comes with the ID that was auto-generated, the name, and the tagline. So the ID is really so unique about this. As of now, I'm pretty sure that this is ID1, this is ID2, and this is ID3. So using that information, I can be able to write a function that I'm going to call to update this model. So now I'm going to write that function just now. So I'll come down here and I'll say definition update blog. So let's look at the update. So to update a blog, ideally you should be knowing a given blog's unique identifier. Maybe before we go to update blog, let us retrieve first our blog items that we have in the system. So let us say this is retrieve blogs. Obviously, I will need some sort of variable to hold this information. So I'll say all blogs being a variable is going to be equivalent to the blog model dot objects dot all. So I'm getting all my blogs I have within the system. And for each of these blogs, we have some information unique about them. So for now, let me simply print out these blogs. So I'll print out all blogs. And again, allow me call this method when we access this. So I've called this retrieve blogs. So I'll come and say retrieve the blogs. And for now, I'll comment out the creation because I don't want it to execute. So let us run this query now. So if I come to this and I execute this function, it will invoke all blogs and I'll have them there. Here. So right here, I have the first blog, the second blog, and the third blog. So you may want to go through the information contained. You want to know the primary key, you want to know the name, you want to know the tagline. So those the individual fields within the model. So I could come and say here, I go through each field using a loop. So I could say for the blog object in the list of blogs returned. So I'll print out the ID of this blog. Let me say print the blog dot the ID or the primary key, whatever you call it, then the name of this blog. Let's have that, the name of the blog and the tagline. I could simply print them out like that. Sorry, blog dot the tagline. So for now, let me comment out this so that we see how to display these individual fields within the model. So right there, I think for now, you'll be able to see that we have individual fields output. So I have ID1, Makere, ID2, Makere new blog, and ID3 created from the view. So if at all your interest is to get a single item, this is returning for us all the items in our model. So if your interest is to get a single item from the model, then you need to know what is unique identifying it. And I mentioned that is the ID. So let's look at how to get just a single item. So in here, we're retrieving blogs. How about retrieving a specific blog? So I could say this is retrieve specific blog. So let me make this function to be reusable. Then I'll say I need a primary key for it. So whenever you're trying to retrieve certain information, put in mind that you could, or a user could pass in maybe an ID that doesn't really exist within a database. So to avoid your system from crashing, it's better you introduce in what we call as exception handling. So I'm going to put it in direct at this point so that I ensure that my system never crashes or my code runs smoothly. So I'll say try, and I'll say the blog that is being retrieved is going to be the model dot objects dot, this is going to be a get. Now we're trying to get something corresponding to a given ID. So I'll say the pk is equivalent to the pk. Yeah. So if at all this blog exists, then we could print it out. So this is going to be, let me see, my data is going to be equals to that. So I'll say the name of the blog is going to be the blog dot the name. The tagline is going to be a blog dot the tagline. So we need equally the ID. So the ID is going to be the blog dot the primary key. Now at this point you can either do primary key or you could do the ID. All of them work fine. So I'll print out my data if at all this was successful. Else, sorry, not else, this is an except. So we shall be accepting an object that is not available. So except blog dot does not exist as E. So we capture our error as a given parameter. So I'll print out this error. Yeah. So I'm going to call this method and I'll pass in some IDs in there. So first, we shall try accessing a blog that's not available in our system with the wrong ID. Then we pass in one that has the correct ID. So this is equally retrieving of data. The first one was getting all the data. The second one is basically getting a single item from the system, matching a given ID. So I'll come here, I'll comment out this, and I'll call retrieve specific blog. I'll pass in an ID of 3, then I'll pass in an ID of maybe 5. Obviously, we are really sure we don't have ID 5 anywhere. So if I run this, I expect to find one with the return data of what we have retrieved, and the other will simply tell us not found. Yeah. So we normally get those errors because I'm typing and my editor is keeping on saving and saving. So right there, we have the first one, ID3, which returned this, which is very correct because it's ID3 with that information created from the view. The tagline was equally from, which is fine. But for ID5, we have this exception that we're able to catch from the except block. So it's telling us the block matching query set does not exist because we're trying to access something with ID 5 that is ideally not available, not anywhere within our system. Okay, so we have been able to retrieve specific content from the system. We have been able to add an item to our blog model. We have been able to fetch all the data from there. Now, I want us to look at some relationships. When we created our models, we created the blog, we created the author, and we created an entry. So the entry has the information about the blog and the authors for the blog. So I'm going to create some authors for us. So allow me to do this just within the admin side. Given the fact we now know how to add this, you could add this direct from a query, or you could use the admin side just like I'm going to do now. So I'll come to the admin site and I'll come to the authors and I'll add some authors there. So I'll say author 1 is David H, and the email, I'll pass in the email of David and I'll save. So I could add another person, maybe Mercy N, and I'll specify their email address as well. So I could say this is maybe mercy@gmail.com, and I'll save. So I have added 2 authors, and our interest is now going to be creating an entry. When you look at the entry model and come and say add, we have a relationship here, which is a foreign key to a given blog, and we have the authors of the blog. So I want us to look at how we can create this particular kind of entry basing on the relationships that are available on it. Okay, so back to our model. So I'm going to come and say we are going to be creating an entry. So definition, create entry. And obviously it's going to be an entry.objects.create. Or you could say the E standing for the entry is equals to the entry, then you create the instance of that and we can save it eventually. Okay, so let's create one and we see how to go around the relationships or how to add them. So I'll come and say my entry is going to be equals to the model entry, and I'll open brackets. Yeah. Okay. Now we have given fields. We have a blog, we have the headline, we have the number of comments, we have the rating. So for me to easily fill in populating this information, allow me copy this out. Then I come to my views file and I paste it there. So I'll make some edits, remove what I don't need. So I don't need that. Obviously, I don't need this. I don't need this. So I'll make these edits all the way to the end. Okay. So having created my entry object, the blog, this should give reference to a given blog of interest. So we should reference blogs with what uniquely identifies them. So those are the IDs. Yeah. So I'll come and say the blog I want to use is going to be a blog dot the objects dot get, and I'll say my ID is equals to maybe 3. So I'll say my blog here is going to be that blog that I've obtained. How about the headline? So this is an entry. So you could put any headline here. I have some headline available. Or I could say visitation as a headline. Then the body text for this, I'll say you are encouraged to pay maybe visits often. Alright, so we are adding an entry which is going to be belonging to a given blog and some authors. Yeah. So what's the publication date? So now this is supposed to be a date which would come in values of now when you're supplying this, it should really be in date format, at least in either a date string or something. So we could import date and we create a date object. So I'll come and say up here, so we shall import date. So from Django, not Django, I'll simply say from date time import date. Or you could say import date time. Now we are going to be creating a date object just below here. So the publication date is going to be a date. Then we shall specify the date of when we want to. So we pass here our date object, and I'll say this is 2025 and maybe the month of June, and the date, which is going to be equivalent to maybe 12th. Don't forget commas to the end. Then the authors, we can add the authors later on, given the fact this is a many-to-many field. So I could add this later on. How about the number of comments? I could say we have 3 comments. How about the pinbacks? I could say these are 2, and a rating of maybe 4. Now we have our entry ready. So I'll come and save this entry. So I'll say entry dot save. Now, given the fact that we now have the entry, we have at least associated it with a given block, we might also need to have this entry belong to some given number of authors, where we have a relationship being the many-to-many field in there. So for now, let us do this, then we shall see how to add in the many-to-many fields to a given entry, just like we shall be creating another one. So I'll come and call create entry. So let me comment out this hashtag and comment out this as well. Then I'll call create entry. Then again, I'll come and execute the home view because it's the function responsible for running our functions I'm writing. Now at this point, I expect an entry added. Perfect. So we have the visitation, and we have it's correctly mapped to the blog we used. The headline is right there. This information is right there. However, we don't have the authors. Yeah. So who are the authors of this particular entry that you have created? So either you can go and update the entry, or we can create another one that has all those fields already available. So I think the easiest will be an update, because I'm really sure this entry is having ID1. It's the first entry within our model. So it's ID1. Now I'll come to my code editor. So allow me to comment out this, or let me say update entry. So definition update entry. So how do we add now the many-to-many relationship to a given item? So I'll need to get the blog, I'll need to get this entry. So I'll say my entry is going to be equals to the entry dot objects dot get. So I won't put here exception handling just for now, because at least I looked at it in the previous example. So I'll say entry dot objects dot get, and my ID is going to be equals to a given ID, which is 1. Now I want to add authors. So I'll say maybe author 1 is going to be equals to the author dot objects dot get, and I'll say the ID is 1. I think I had 2 authors in the system. So this is author 1. So I need to have, let me add both the authors. Again, the fact it's a many-to-many. Let me add both the 2 authors I have in the system. And this is going to be ID of 2. Now we need to call the update for this one. So I'll say entry dot the author dot add. Then I'll say I'm adding author 1. Then I'll come and add author 2 using the same approach. So entry dot authors dot add, and I'll say this is author 2. Now we have these 2 authors added correctly. We have our entry retrieved from a DB. What is missing here is to save, so that the changes are impacted on the database. So I'll simply come and say now entry dot save. Now let's call this method when we invoke our function. So I'll call update entry. So this is update entry. So back to this, I'll come here, refresh this, and check. Now I expect these authors to be marked because I have added them to this particular entry that we created. So right there, they are all marked, signifying they are now authors of this entry. Okay, so if at all you're enjoying this particular video, please kindly don't forget to subscribe and like and give a comment down there. Whatever you feel like you need me to work on with respect to Django REST framework, or is simply put your comment down there and I'll surely have a recording about it. Yeah, okay, so let's look at some filters as well. So I'm going to have a function written. So this is going to be, this is a filter function. How do you perform filters? You want to retrieve something matching a given criteria within your database. So we employ filters. For instance, I could want to make a query where I'm retrieving blogs that have a certain name or have a certain tagline or have a given name and a given tagline, right? Or entries where the blog name was something. These are queries. So queries make your application, how could I call this? They enable retrieving and providing certain data that is required for particular endpoints within a given application that you're building. So back here, so we shall start with the basic queries. So I'm going to write a query which is going to get for me from my blogs a blog where the name is maybe this is off. Is my server off? Let me just check. Okay, I've not completed the function, so let me just put here pass. Okay, so I'm going to be fetching. I want to retrieve blogs where the name probably is Makere blog. So I'll come here and say my blogs is going to be equals to a blog dot objects dot filter. Then I'll say the name is equivalent to whatever name I'm looking out for. So I call this Makere blogs. So this is a bit case sensitive. So you should really be specific on the spelling. So Makere blog. So this returns a list of items. So I could print this and see what we have. So I expect just a single item because within my database structure or my database, I only have one item that has Makere blog. So let us prove that by calling this function again inside here. So come and retrieve. So check your terminal. So it's a single item. So if at all I make any modification to this and maybe say this is a small b, then I won't find that one item with a small b because it's now no longer matching the search criteria or the search pattern. So one thing you should know, this is equivalent to an exact search, an exact filter in Django. So this is equivalent to what I'm going to write below. So if I comment out this and I say now my blogs is going to be these blogs, but then now I perform an exact filter. So this is exact. That means I want something exactly matching this. Then I'll now have that blog being returned. So spelling of exact. think this is correct spelling, so let me refresh this. Yeah, perfect. So if I check through my CMD, I have the blog. However, if I want this not to have sensitivity, in a way that whether a user specifies my query with a small m and the small b, for as long as the spelling is correct, then I have to put here the I exact. So this I exact removes sensitivity, case sensitivity. So in other words, it makes this insensitive to casing when you're performing your filter. So refresh this. We expect to find the block there. Perfect. So you can perform a filter across a name. You can perform a filter across literally anything. For instance, I might want to search across the date. Yeah. But let's first exhaust this one. So you might equally want to perform a search whereby you want anything having marker to show up or anything having the word blog to show up. So in there, we use the contains. Instead of saying I exact, I would simply say I contains. If this blog contains this substring, then it's valid to be within the blocks that I'm fetching. So I'll come here and call my blocks again. However, this time round is not I exact, but rather I contains. So obviously contains is case sensitive. I contains is not case sensitive. So anything that has marker should be returned. And looking at our system, we had two items with marker, this one and this one. So I expect two items populating down here. So let's refresh here and say, so perfect. We have marker blog and marker new blog. So whenever you want to perform a search that is less case sensitive and your interest is in something containing, making a search across your model for the fields that contain a given substring, then we use the I contains search method to retrieve those objects. Okay, so that is I exact. Then we also have the range. You might want to search across the range. In other words, in here, when you look at our entries, we have an entry where probably the number of comments is 3. Let me see this other one. The new bibliography, the number of comments is 1. So I'm going to check for those entries where the number of comments is between 1 and maybe 5. So let me add another entry whereby it will be greater than 5 so that our pattern works correctly. So I'll do that and I'll put in any kind of body to this. Then I'll say this is belonging to Mercy. Number of comments, I'll say 5. And number of this, I'll say maybe 3. Rating, I'll say a 5. And I'll save. Now, I need us to perform a query whereby our interest is going to be around the number of comments. And we want those entries where the comments is between 1 and maybe 4. Okay, so that we apply the range. So I'll come here and put my hash. Then I'll say now the blogs. So instead of saying blogs, it's now going to be entries. Let me just modify this to entries. So the entries is going to be the entry model .objects.filter, and now this is going to be the number of comments. Let me copy this so I'm sure of the spelling. So the number of comments, so dash dash now the range is equivalent to, we put a list here. Then you specify the start and the end. So I want between 1 and 4. Comments between 1 and 4. So I expect 2 entries because the last entry I inserted has a number of comments as 5. So let me run my function and look at the output from the CMD. So I think you can see we have the visitation and the new. This last one I recently added is not matching. So we have this and this, sorry, this and this. This recent one I added, irrespective of them having the same headline. Let me just say recent. So we are sure it's not the other. This has 5 and it's not the one being returned within this query set. Yeah, it's not the one being returned. I think you can see it's the new entry that has the 3 and this one that has the 1. So this range applies to anything. It could be across the year, across the date, across the time, across anything literally. That could be numeric. Yeah. Okay. So this is the range filter. How about searching across related fields, across a foreign key? I want to search for those entries where the headline, where the blog's name contained Makere. I hope I have some in there. So I'll come here. Allow me to comment out this since we have looked at how to consume it. So a hashtag there. And I'll come and create here another one. So I'll say entries is equal to entry.objects.filter. And now I'm filtering across a related name. Yeah. So I'll come and say the blog. And what do I want within the blog? So the blog has a name and a tagline. So if I told your interest is in searching across the tagline, then you put dash dash the tagline. So I'll simply go with dash dash the name, and I'll pass here what I'm looking out for. And I need I contains as well. So I'll put dash dash I contains, and I'll say Makere. So how many entries do we have? If I inspect my data, okay, this one we have created from the view, not perfect. How about this one? We have Makere. How about this one? We have Makere. So now in here, I expect again 2 entries that are matching that search pattern. So come back to your view and reload this. Perfect. So let's look at the output. So I have the 2 entries, new biography and new biography recent, which is exactly the same thing that we had here. I think by now you've noticed that really making queries in Django is something very, very simple. Something that shouldn't really stress you around, that you're looking at how the Django ORM is specific, very well documented and easy to follow and use. Yeah. Okay. So this is for a filter across a related field, a field that is related to some other model somewhere within your models that you have. So we have looked at quite a number of them. How about slicing? How do you limit something like you want to slice? How do you exclude? Yeah, maybe you've obtained your details page, so you're getting details of product 5, and you don't want to include in other products. So you don't want that product to be listed as other items, so you can exclude it from that other query set that you're going to be returning. So to exclude, again, let us come here. So I'll put a hash there, and I'll say now my entries is going to be a filter of that. Then you could exclude something if at all you want to. You can filter by this, then you exclude. So let us see what you could exclude from this. So when I look at my entries, I have this. Maybe I want to exclude those things where the publication date, to be specific, the year, is less than 2025. Yeah. Okay, so having performed this query, I'll come and say dot exclude. Yeah, then I'll say the publication. This is the publication date. Yeah, let me expand this. So the publication date, so dash dash the year, and I'll say this is less than or equal to, sorry, dash dash, less than or equal to, and I'll give the year. I'll say 2025. Let us see what this really outputs for us in the terminal. So I'm going to reload this, and we shall come and check. So right there we have an empty query set. So we have an empty query set because of excluding what the year is here. So we are having that we're excluding all those entries where the year is less than 2025. And when you look at your entries of the database model, we have this is 2024, and I think this was equally 2024, and this is Makere. This is equally Makere, I believe. Yes, and this last one is not Makere. So if at all you want to have one of them displaying so that our query set maybe picks at least a single item, I could change this to year 2027 and I'll save. So in our query, we have said that we want those blocks whose name contains Makere. However, we are excluding those where the publication year is less than 2025. So the one I've set to 2027 should show up in this kind of query. Now let us see how this will work. So let's refresh this. I expect a single item being returned for us. Yes, perfect. So we have this single query set being returned for us as the output there. So this is how we exclude. Whenever you want to filter and exclude, do that. So what application? Where can you apply excluding? You can apply excluding in scenarios where we are getting details of a product. For instance, I want to get details of maybe a given computer. So within that details page, you don't want to again return that computer as a part of the other product. So you can exclude a product with that ID that you're currently displaying. Yes. So we have what we call as chaining filters. You can perform a chain of a filter. For instance, we want to get maybe those items that are matching a given headline and also a given kind of maybe body text. So you can chain filters. Let us look at how to chain filters. So I'll put a hash here and I'll come and say now my entries is going to be equals to the entry dot objects dot filter. So here I'm going to say my blog name maybe contains something Makere, then again I'll apply another filter. I'll again say dot filter. Yeah, then I'll say the name contains Makere, but equally, maybe I want the body text to contain something. And I'll say body text dash dash I contains is equals to whatever you're going to be searching out for. So let us look at our model again. So let me just say the body text contains some, so that at least this is returned for us. So I'll print out my entries. So I'll come and say reload this page and check my CMD. So again, I have that one item there, new biography, because it's matching that information. The name contains Makere, and equally the body contains some within the body text. So this is how we chain. Whenever you're looking at chaining filters, you do that. In other words, your search should match both this and this, not any of the two. And that is called filtering. So we have other scenarios where you might want to check for whether something starts with a given word or ends with a given word. So those are equally valid. You could say the blog name, then you say this starts with maybe whatever you're looking out for. So let us look at that. So I'll come and say now my entries is going to be this. Let me copy that. Objects.filter, but instead of saying I contains, I'll simply say starts with, and I'll say Makere. So let's look at this query, see what it will return for us. So reload it. It executed successfully, and we have the two entries. We have new biography and new biography recent. Why? Because their blog names start with the word Makere. Okay. Now that we have looked at those, let us look at how to perform a slice. Yeah. A slice is maybe getting either the first 5 items or getting the last 10 items from your model or from your table. You'll find other people calling it limiting. Yeah, so it could be limiting, it could be, in my case I call it slicing because it's like a slice of a normal list in Python. So let us look at how to slice. So hashtag, I could come and say again, I want to retrieve all my entries. Yeah, I'm retrieving all these entries, but then this time round, I want all of them. I'm not filtering. So after getting all these items, I want the first 2. Yes, here we're now limiting our queries. We're getting the first 2 items from the model. So I'll come and refresh. Let us look at the first 2 items. So in here I have a visitation and I have the new biography. Why? Because they are the first 2 items. So visitation and new biography. And we are displaying whatever was entered first, not whatever was entered last. So if at all your interest is to get the first 2 items recently added, then you can order your query set. So I could come and say, I want to order this, order by, and I'll pass here, I want to order this by the ID. So I'll put negative ID. Now this should return for us new biography recent and this other one. Let us look at that query. I think you can see. Yeah. So if at all you want to get the recent items, you can order by the negative ID and again supply the limit of how many items you want. So limiting can be that you could say I want to get from the first to maybe to the third, whatever kind of limiting you want. So we have a very important aspect that you could use on maybe a product page. Take for instance, I'll give an example of Jumia Uganda. So if you come to Jumia Uganda's website, this is jumia.ug, you will have a list of so many items displayed for you. Okay, I think my network is slow. As it's loading, I'll get back to it. So you'd have a list of so many items displayed. So you don't expect your users to always come and keep finding the same items, keep finding the same items. Okay, it has loaded fully now. So I don't expect people to always come and find the same phone, the same products, the same everything on this web application. Then it ceases meaning of when you let somebody ever see some other product that maybe was added at some point in time on this particular platform. So now Django has a very appropriate way of randomly selecting items and again limiting on the number of items you're displaying. So instead of us ordering by a negative ID, I could come and randomly order this. And I say I want to pick out the first two items. So we are shuffling our query set and picking out just the first two items from the random shuffling that we have performed on the data. So let us look at this. If I refresh this, then you don't expect to find always the same items returned. So the first time we have, this is new entry and new entry biography. So I'm going to shuffle again. So we see what we shall have on the next round. So refresh this again and we check. So on our second refresh, we have new biography recent and this time round visitation. So you notice you will never have a similar kind. Okay, it could happen, but very rare in scenarios where you have a lot of products added in the system. Now here we have new biography recent. It has simply altered the first kind of response we had. So this is very important in displaying items on the home page, whereby somebody is not expected to always find the same things on the web application. You apply limiting together with ordering. So you can order by any field name, either by, I could come and say I want to order by maybe the headline, the body, or I could order by the name. Literally any kind of field you want from the model. You can use it for ordering purposes. Okay. So we had looked at the range, which is fine. So you can apply a range across anything. I think I mentioned it already, across a date, across numbers, across literally anything that is it. You can apply the range filter. Okay, so how about filtering across multiple? I want to filter across, I want to check for whether it's available in the blog or available in the headline or available in the body text. In other words, this is an OR operation. Yeah, performing your search, and you want your search to span multiple fields of the model, not just a single field or not matching this and this. So we are going to be performing an OR kind of search. Now we come back to our view. Then I'll comment out this again and I'll write another query. So at this point, I want us to write a query where we are going to filter multiple fields. So I'll say my entries is going to be equals to the entry dot objects dot filter. You open the bracket. So here we have to import a query set, and this is found from we find it under django.db.models. So from django.db.models we import a query set. So I performed it initially up here. So I have the import statement there. So I'm going to be using this to perform a field lookup across multiple fields. Now I'll come and say my Q parameter that I've imported. Then I'll target a given field of preference. Now, this is dependent on the kind of query you're writing. Yeah, if you're targeting just a single thing or multiple of them, so let us start with maybe the blog. And when you look at the blog, it was a foreign key to the blog. So I'll come and say the blog underscore underscore the name underscore underscore. Then I could say I contains whatever such parameter that you're looking out for, or string. So I'll say maybe blog, and I'll say all the Q parameter again. I specify the next field. So this could be the headline underscore underscore I contains is equivalent to again the blog. You could again search across another field. I could say again my Q. Then I'll write my next query, maybe the body text underscore underscore I contains is equivalent to again the blog. So what this query is going to do, it's going to come to each of these fields and check, does the blog contain this? Okay, yes. Or does the headline contain this? So any kind of entry that is matching that criteria, either this or this or this, having the word blog on the inside, is going to be valid for the query I've just written here. Now I could come and perform my filter. Let us execute this and see what will be returned for us. Now I have these two elements, new biography and new biography recent. So these are matching that criteria again. It's either their name contains this, or the headline contains this, or the body text contains that information. Just like that. You can prove that by again checking on your models. Entry to be specific, then you come and check visitation. Here we don't have that, we don't have that, we don't have. We come to the next one. Here at least we have a blog, no blog, nothing. We come to the other one. We have a blog, we have nothing, we have nothing. So these two qualify. Why they qualify? Because the word blog is available within at least one of their fields. So I've looked at quite a number of filters and a number of queries that you could perform within Django. And again, there are so many other filters or queries that you could perform in Django, of which maybe I've not talked about some, but again, there are so very many of them that could perform. So I would end here for today's recording, and I encourage us to look into other filters, other queries again from Django. Django has this very well documented, very well documented. So I wish us the best of the time, and again, thank you so much for giving this some time and learning from David. So I look forward to seeing you in the next recording. Please don't forget putting in your comments, talk about anything that you would wish me to cover in the next maybe recording, or something you really feel burning that you would want me to address in any of my recordings that I'm scheduling for us. Yes, I'll really be very glad to have those recorded and shared for us to learn. So may God be with us all, and yeah, my session will end there.